Why did Jared Kushner receive $2 billion for an investment fund just months after leaving the White House? The American people deserve answers, and we should never stop until we get them.
That is Representative Robert Garcia asking, I think, the same questions that many of us have been asking ever since it was revealed that Jared Kushner's startup investment fund was showered with literally billions of dollars by the Saudis over the advice of their own investment review board. MBS himself had to step in and say, no, give the immediate family member of the former president of the United States billions of dollars. And we're gonna get a little bit more from him. Just bear in mind, there are some new details, a new report that's out as part of what Garcia is responding to there that makes this story look way worse than it already did. But here's more from the representative.
Jared Kushner collected $112 million in fees, but hasn't made a single dime for the Saudis through this fund. Now, we don't know if the Saudis expected profits or if they just wanted to reward Jared for his service. This $2 billion payment for this investment fund represents the reward of sitting next to former President Trump and pushing for pro-Saudi policies. During his time in the White House, Mr. Kushner consistently ignored the recommendations of top foreign policy experts at the State Department and even ignored the warnings of Trump's own Secretary of State.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
So Garcia there referenced, I guess, the most damning part of this new report, and it is that in just the last 3 years since this investment was set up between Kushner and his company and the Saudis, they've been paid $112 million, and they have delivered no profits whatsoever for Saudi Arabia. It almost makes you think that investment review board in Saudi Arabia was onto something when they said this would be a bad use of our money. But it was not just a bad use, as in we get nothing. We actually lose $112 million, a measurable percentage of the entire invested amount, mind you. And so Jared Kushner, doing as mediocre a job as you would expect he would do, since this isn't his world at all, gets something like $40 million or so a year. Look, I personally think that there should be more national discussion about this, and there is a potential world where that would happen. If this was Hunter Biden's firm, we would be talking about this nonstop. But it's Jared Kushner, so it's gonna be Garcia, the New York Times, we'll talk about it, and then in a week we'll all be moving on with our life. But what do you make of this?
Yeah, look, I think that it's important that Congressman Garcia, Senator Wyden, they're talking about this. It doesn't strike me that the law was broken, but it strikes me that there are red flags about this and influence into our politics. And it's consistent with Mayor Adams, who we talked about earlier, John, and involvement with Turkey. It's consistent with how we talk about Russia. And yes, it is consistent as to why there were red flags about Hunter Biden and China and Ukraine and foreign governments. People get concerned about this, but there's hard money here. There is a real open case here. All the others are alleged. This is real. And whether or not it's illegal, and I don't presume that it is, but what it shows is foreign access to a potential U.S. administration, to a president. It shows, obviously, and I don't know that we can control this, is Jared Kushner going to have an easier time putting together a fund because he's the former president's son-in-law? Absolutely. There's no avoiding that. We only have one president. He only has one son-in-law. So that sort of stuff is going to happen where people think that they're going to get access by investing. The question is, how do we prevent that access from, how do we prevent, and shine a light and put some transparency into this? And that is what I think is frustrating these members of Congress, and rightly so.
Yeah. And look, I agree with the overall, one of the most important points is it doesn't look like, and in fact, I don't even think it's being alleged that any laws were broken, but that is also like the entire point. Like that's, right. It's weird that you can do this and not break any laws. Yeah. And the fact that when in a variety of different ways, these politicians generate massive wealth for themselves without ever running afoul of the law, that's the whole thing that we should be having a national conversation about. Because of course, it's not a coincidence. They're the ones that set up the laws that exist and the gaps in those laws where hypothetically laws might be. where you might reasonably have more controls over corruption. We don't, because the people who would very much like to be corrupt aren't passing those bills for some reason. And
Right.
so, and by the way, I want to make clear to everyone, it isn't just that this is like payback theoretically for like past stuff. That's what the ethical allegations are, for past stuff that Trump might have done, or you pay him and then like they'll remember it later if Trump gets back in, and now the Saudis have more of an in. But there's also concern about what could happen in the future, because the Affinity, the investment company, has a 5-year deal with its backers, gives it until August 2026 to find companies it wants to invest in. That would be nearly halfway through a Trump second term if he wins in November. So theoretically, and I'm going to quote Senator Ron Wyden, who you referenced earlier, says a potential future Trump administration will have financial motives to make foreign policy decisions that may be counter to the national interest in order to ensure Kushner and Ivanka Trump continue to collect millions of dollars in fees from foreign governments through Affinity. And of course, there's a variety of ways, other ways that Donald Trump himself could personally benefit from Saudi money. They buy condos, they rent out his hotel, they do all those sorts of things. For all we know, they're buying Trump digital trading cards, which I don't think anybody's even looking into how easy that would be to do. But anyway, there are a lot of concerns for what could happen in the future as well. The issue is that I don't really see any of that concern coming from the right, a right who swears that they're worried about elite corruption and the deep state, and also generally are very suspicious of Saudis, the Saudis, their government, Muslims in general. Huge blind spot when it comes to Donald Trump and his family here. Any other thoughts?
No question. And where's James Comer and his oversight committee in Congress that has spent so much time on Hunter Biden? It seems like that there should be a crying out for this sort of thing. Congress is basically over until after the election. In December, they're going to come back and they're going to get a funding bill. You're not going to see this stuff realized. But I do think it's going to be, should the former president win in November, it's going to be a challenge for him to bring Jared Kushner, who seems not to want anything to do with him, back into his administration. But you're right about, especially when it comes to Saudi Arabia, especially when it comes to foreign influence, especially when it comes to drill, baby, drill here, and not coddling to the oil producing nations, which is a mantra of the people that support Trump. So it's definitely worth looking at this stuff. It's definitely worth having some sort of regulation of this. Regulation of access, the way we have anti-lobbying laws after people leave Congress. It's not perfect, it's not leak-proof, but at least it sends that message and creates that box.
Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.